It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
We saw a lot happen across the NFL in Week 9, so joining us on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington to get into all the action from Las Vegas, we've got Scott Gulbransen, sports radio host of Silver and Black Today on CBS 1140. All right, welcome to the show, Scott. I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, Renee, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk football.
Yes, now I don't even know. There were so many big games. I guess we got to lead off with the Patriots' first loss of the season. One of the biggest names that we've heard across the league all year as he continues to prove that he is no joke. And that's quarterback Lamar Jackson, 3 touchdowns in the Ravens' big win over the Patriots, 37-20. Wow. What were your thoughts as you're watching this unfold and you see the Ravens put up 17 quickly on the Patriots?
Well, I'll tell you, what is not to like about this kid, about Lamar Jackson? I mean, the Ravens now stand at 6-2. Last night he throws for 163 yards and a touchdown, runs for another 61, and scores 2 touchdowns on the ground. I'll tell you what, between him and Deshaun Watson, those 2 guys I'm having the most fun watching at the quarterback position. This young crop of talented young quarterbacks that has come into the NFL. And with Jackson, I just love the kid's demeanor. I love his maturity. I love that he also wanted to prove all the critics wrong, right? He said early on in the season, look, I'm not just a running back. I can throw the ball. I can run the ball, certainly. But last night, his coach, John Harbaugh, and the Ravens and that team led by Jackson, they just punched Bill Belichick and the Patriots in the mouth, Renee. There's no other way to put it. From coaching, from the game plan to the way that team played, they were out for it, and they really brought it to the Patriots. Let's face it. Look, you could talk all you want about Tom Brady being the GOAT and the success that Bill Belichick has had. The reality is they play in the AFC East. This was the first legitimate team that they played, and look what happened.
Absolutely.
The Ravens came out, and they just gave it to them. And, boy, I'll tell you what, I like the Ravens the rest of the year, and I think they're going to do just well, especially with Jackson at the helm.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things that really stood out to me. As I was looking at the Patriots' undefeated start to the season, from the beginning I was saying they're not going to have any real competition until at the time what I thought was the Browns. I thought they were going to be competition. But when you look at their start to the season, they didn't play anyone. You know, they're beating up on the Dolphins. They're beating up on all these struggling teams that are below 500. And the Ravens, since the Browns have not had a great start, this was the very first game this season where they were really tested. And so to see the way that they lost in that game, and something I really take away from it is for all, as great as they played, Lamar Jackson after the game, very humble, wasn't bragging at all, and was saying he doesn't care about beating Tom Brady. Brady's still the GOAT. So 2 top teams in the AFC, and the Ravens proved to be number 1.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Renee, and you're right about Jackson. That's why I name him and Deshaun Watson, because both of those guys show a level of maturity to me way beyond their years. And Lamar Jackson, let's face it, he's got the talent. He puts up the numbers. He's been phenomenal through 8 weeks this first half of the season. And, building that offense around him as they have done. And not only that, but the way he handles adversity, the way he handles tough situations, he doesn't turn over the ball. And as a coach, that's the one thing you look for in a young quarterback, right? We've seen, like, Daniel Jones in New York, who's going to be a good quarterback too, but he tends to make more mistakes. Lamar Jackson is the real deal, and he is going to be very, very exciting for years to come.
Yeah, that win definitely solidified the fact that the Ravens are also the real deal, and Lamar Jackson is that everything we've seen up to this point, when you can beat the Patriots in the way that they did, it's like nothing else matters. You know, it's easy to say, okay, their early season success is just, catching lightning in a bottle, but to beat the defending Super Bowl champs and Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and as you said, on all aspects of the game. It wasn't just the third quarter fumble by Julian Edelman that solidified it, or, one quick start. The whole game as a whole, they just were the better team when you look at it.
You're right. It was a good old-fashioned butt whipping, as we say, right? And not only that, but the one thing I always tell people when I talk about NFL football, especially early in the season, right, which is when you get to about mid-October, teams are who they're going to be. So you saw last night with this Ravens squad that they are a legitimate contender in the AFC. And I'm not just talking about in their division. I'm talking about the entire AFC up there with clearly the Patriots and the Chiefs, who will get Patrick Mahomes back here pretty soon. So yes, they got to feel really good coming out of that game. And if I'm a Ravens fan today, I am walking on cloud nine.
Yeah, and another team that's walking on cloud nine right now, and their fans, I'm sure, are thrilled since this is the best start they've had, the Seattle Seahawks. MVP candidate quarterback Russell Wilson, my goodness. Not only is he shining off the field, I love everything him and his wife Sierra do. They're such a cute couple. But in terms of football specifically, I mean, he has thrown 22 touchdown passes this season to just one interception. And in the win over Tampa Bay, 5 touchdowns. They went in overtime. My goodness. That was also a moment where it's the Seahawks are also no team that you can take lightly right now. I mean, are you surprised at all by this incredible start the Seahawks have had?
In our business, we have to put fandom aside because we're trying to be radio hosts and journalists. So you don't technically root for anybody, right? But I'll tell you what, right? I've been a closet Seahawks fan, and the reason is Russell Wilson. Not bad for a guy they said was too small to make it in the NFL, right? Yesterday, like you said, 5 touchdowns, 378 yards. Okay, a passer rating of 133.7. And Wilson, if you look at this stat, 90 wins, including the postseason, since entering the NFL in 2012. He's tied with Ben Roethlisberger for the most by a quarterback, including that postseason, in his first 8 seasons in the Super Bowl era. So anyone who wants to tell me that Russell Wilson isn't one of the best of all time would be completely wet, because Russell Wilson and this Seahawks team is amazing. I have not seen a quarterback, including the Tom Brady's of the world, have the amazing knack to consistently make picture-perfect deep ball throws. This is Russell Wilson, the guy that's not even 6 foot, right? And he's able to do it. He's able to do it consistently. Now, for the Seahawks, that defense isn't as good as they need it to be, right? So that's the one Achilles heel for this team. But they are fun to watch, and on any given Sunday, as they say, with Russell Wilson back there, with Chris Carson at running back now, with Tyler Lockett on the outside as well, you have quite a pretty good group there of guys who can make a run. So if I'm in the NFC and I got to face a team in the playoffs, I do not want to face Seattle with the experience and with that quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've always been a team that's been fun to watch, and they had a couple years after their 2013 Super Bowl or 2014, where they just kind of dropped off. And it is fun to watch the Seahawks play for that exact reason. I love underdog stories. Not that Russell Wilson has ever been a true underdog, but I know during the down times of the Seahawks, a lot was put on his shoulders. And to see how they've not only overcome that, but to be one of the top teams in the league right now, most fun to watch, for him to be easily an MVP candidate right now, that is in itself just it contributes to him as a whole, the type of player that he is, the type of competitor that he is, and definitely the maturity level that he brings to that team to help them play on another level. Right,
and in today's NFL, you have to have a quarterback that is a game changer. And so when you have that is exactly what Russell Wilson is, right? So even in down years where they might be putting together a roster, making improvements, they have to have a quarterback. And Russell Wilson has been the one consistency there, and you don't see that changing anytime soon. And you can see what happens when they put tools around him. And of course, the young receiver DK Metcalf, who came out as just a man-child out of college, he's starting to pick up now, too, as he gets into a rhythm with Russell Wilson. So they're going to be fun to watch the rest of the way.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm looking forward to it. There have been a lot of great quarterback storylines throughout this season, and we talked about Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson. Another one with the Panthers. My goodness. Head coach Ron Rivera said that without a doubt, quarterback Kyle Allen will start Sunday versus Green Bay. we've seen him step in Cam Newton's place, and he's one of the quarterbacks, much like Daniel Jones, who you mentioned with the Giants, that has stepped up and has shown out. And we've seen a number of quarterbacks across the league this year that are under the age of 30 that have been, whether they're too small, like Kyler Murray, or they're just a young guy underneath of an Eli Manning type personality or Cam Newton, that shows, you know what, the next generation is here and we are ready to go. And that's just been so great to see how that's all unraveled.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that Rivera, the Panthers, doing the right thing with Cam Newton, because that injury, he played injured for a while and might have done himself some damage, and so they want to make sure he's right. I'm a Cam Newton fan myself too, and I want to see him get back to 100% and knowing what he can do on the field. But Kyle Allen has stepped in, and then of course Cam Newton might not be happy about it, but his teammate on the offensive side of the ball, McCaffrey, let me tell you, this kid as well. He can take the Superman mantle right from Cam, because this kid is amazing. When you look at Christian McCaffrey, 166 scrimmage yards on Sunday, I should say, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving. I mean, he has 1,244 scrimmage yards and 13 touchdowns this season. It's the 6th player in NFL history and the first since Priest Holmes to have 1,200 scrimmage yards and 13 touchdowns in the first 8 games of the season. We're only halfway through the season, Renee. This guy is putting up just crazy numbers, and barring injury, could also be a viable MVP candidate as well.
You know what? You took the words right out of my mouth, because my next point that I was going to actually ask about was Christian McCaffrey, because, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks that are stepping up, but to see the numbers that Christian McCaffrey is putting up every single week, and his 3 touchdowns, and more than just the touchdowns, the way he's able to get yards, the way he's like Superman. It's great to see, how the Panthers, there's a lot of focus on Cam Newton and his injury, and there was a lot of talk about that. But you know what? The Panthers are still right there. They've got other guys stepping up, McCaffrey being one of them, and they're still a contender every single week. And we saw that in their win this past weekend.
No, and again, the numbers, the record book, and everything that he's doing. I mean, you're talking about records. My favorite football player of all time, even though he played before I was born, was Jim Brown, right? And you look at McCaffrey, his 150 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. He's the only player besides Brown to have 6 performances like that in the first 8 games in a season. So he's joining names like Jim Brown and names like Abner Hayes from the early 60s as well, and just completely doing this. And here's another guy, too, that they said was too small coming out of Stanford, right? But McCaffrey is one tough son of a gun, and him and along with Allen stepping in for Newton are carrying that Panthers team, and they are exceeding expectations.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Jim Brown, because, Scott, that might be the only positive thing we can say about a Brown this week. As we talk about all the success and exciting games of the past weekend, there have been a few teams that are underperforming, and the first one that comes to mind, of course, the Cleveland Browns. And what makes it worse, aside from them losing to Denver, looking at all the drama that is going on. I mean, from the NFL ordering OBJ and Jarvis Landry to change their cleats at halftime. Then we saw safety Jermaine Whitehead with his threatening social media posts. He's been waived. I mean, it's been one thing after the other. It's like a dumpster fire in Cleveland. And this is a team that prior to the season starting, everybody had such high expectations. They're going to be the best team in the league. They're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to go undefeated. All these like extremely large, ludicrous predictions. And I was always saying, let's just see how it plays out. It's a lot of personalities coming together, and we all know personalities not always gel the way they should on paper. They do not always do that, and they are not.
No, they do not. And I'll tell you what, I'm there with you, Renee. At the beginning of the season, I said on my show that I was not a believer in the Browns. Could they make a playoff run and make the playoffs? I thought, yeah, I could see the talent on the roster there to be able to do it with Lindsey. Of course, adding OBJ and these guys, I figured they could do it. But I will tell you that to me, the big issue in Cleveland, and you touched on it, which is they're having locker room issues. They're having problems with controlling kind of the narrative of what's happening there, even though they have young players like Nick Chubb and all these other guys. Mm-hmm. The problem to me in Cleveland, and I'm not a big guy who comes out and says fire coaches, but I don't think Kitchens is getting the job done. I think you see an organization, at least the football side of it, on the field and in the locker room that's out of control, that lacks leadership, and that's why players are taking advantage. You see Baker Mayfield and his contentious press conferences, and of course then OBJ with the cleats and all this other stuff. All this stuff happens because there's a lack of control and a lack of cohesiveness and leadership, to me, in the locker room. Players left to their own devices, I think, can go astray because personalities take over, and there's a lot of strong ones in that locker room. But when you look at Freddie Kitchens, you look at the coach and what he's doing there, I just think that they're underperforming, and he's lost that locker room.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I feel like it's now snowballing out of control because you go from being a team that everybody was talking about once OBJ, once all these off-season moves happened, everybody was talking about them as the best team in the league, and they're sitting at 2-6 now, and they're not playing well at all. They've had offensive struggles. They just have had issues on the field all throughout, plus the issues that are going on off the field. All of those things together just continues to snowball out of control. And that's where someone has to, and it has to come from the head coach. It has to come from your coaching staff and your leaders and your veterans. Someone's got to put their foot down and say, no. You know what? Even if we're not focusing on this season in terms of playoff runs and a Super Bowl, because that right now is out of reach in terms of the Super Bowl. But let's at least focus on finishing the rest of the season strong. How can we turn this 2-6 season around to now be a team that's, at least over 500, setting small goals, whatever they have to do to be able to be less than just what they are right now, which is a laughing stock in a sense.
Yes, and I also think with the players in that locker room, they need to police themselves. Odell Beckham Jr. is a veteran in that locker room for the most part, right, with a couple other guys. Step up and have a players-only meeting. Get everybody together. Get everybody on the same page. In the absence of leadership from the head coach, I would like to see those players step up and say, hey, guys, we got to save our season. Whether or not you believe in where this coach has taken us, we got to believe in ourselves. We got to believe in one another. If we can't do that, then things are going to spiral out of control, and you never know what happens. So, to me, I'd like to see the players take some accountability there. I'd like to see Baker Mayfield maybe not bemoan and belittle a reporter, and instead look at his own teammates and say, hey, guys, let's get together, let's get on the same page, and let's play hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And another team that's also struggling, the Bears. Now, trust me, and don't get me wrong when I say I am thrilled that they struggled this past weekend. I'm an Eagles fan, so the fact that the Eagles won that game, I will take it. Whether it's a team that's struggling right now or a top team in the league, a win is a win, and I will take it. But for quarterback Mitch Trubisky and the Bears, offensively, it's been a tough 8 games. They are 3-5, but much like the Browns, they're definitely underperforming, and they're definitely a team that's dealing with a lot of on-field issues in terms of trying to figure things out. What is really needed? We talk about the Browns having to have someone put their foot down and be a leader and get the team on the same page. For the Bears, what do they need to do to, moving forward, be a better team and just play better football?
Well, I think you hit on it, which is they need to turn that offense around. Mitchell Trubisky didn't have a bad day against the Eagles, but he also didn't have the kind of day where he took his team on his shoulders and went down and scored enough points to help them have a chance to win. The Bears at 3-5, you're right. They were another team that everyone seemed to be already giving and punching the ticket through to the playoffs and to the Super Bowl, and here they stand at 3-5 looking for answers. And I think this also is indicative of the fact that I don't care in today's NFL, and people can argue this with me, I don't care how good your defense is. Without a good, high-performing, efficient offense, you will not win. It is not 1985. You need to have a good defense? Yes. Do you need to have a great defense? No. If you look at some of the teams who are doing really well, i.e. the Chiefs, who are winning without their quarterback even, their defenses aren't very good at all, but they have the offense to lead it. And with the NFL, with the rules and how things are going, that is why the Bears are struggling. If the Bears had a Lamar Jackson, it would be a different story, right? They would have someone who leads them in offense, has the tools around him to take it down. And so the Bears are going to struggle until they can figure it out. And my guess is that they have now seen enough of Mitchell Trubisky. If he can't turn it around in the next 8 weeks, they're going to have to make a move. And what's remarkable is they got Khalil Mack, the best defensive player, at least one of the best defensive players in the league, from the Raiders in that trade. That was a shocker last year. But even Khalil Mack is struggling. And now that trade looks really good for the Raiders because as of right now, you're talking about the 10th overall pick in the draft coming up in 2020, which, by the way, will be held here in Las Vegas. You have the 10th pick. The Raiders may have a pick from the Bears that's better than their own for trading Khalil Mack. So if the Bears don't turn it around pretty soon, I think they're going to be in big trouble. But they do have that core defense, and if they can figure out offensively what they're going to do at quarterback and surround a good quarterback with some tools to work with, they can turn it around, I would imagine, pretty quickly.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's been a struggle. We've seen teams, the Eagles being one of them, that have struggled offensively, and you cannot expect your defense to log heavy minutes on the field and continue to bail you out. You know, the offense has to get the job done, and the Bears are definitely not doing that right now. So they've got to figure some things out. But, Scott, where can our listeners follow you on social media to keep up with all your sports coverage?
Sure. They can follow me on Twitter at LV. That's LVGULLY, LV Gully. You can also listen to us on CBS Sports Radio 1140, which is you can find on the radio.com app. Silver and Black Today, which is our Raiders. So if you're a Raiders fan or you're just a football fan or your team's playing the Raiders, we do a show on Sunday mornings Pacific time, 8 to 10 a.m., and then do another show on Tuesday evenings from 9 to 10 Eastern time as well. So they can find me there.
Awesome. And I just realized, I guess Gully is a nickname for Gulbransen.
You got it.
Right?
It makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
Then people don't have to pronounce it.
Yeah. You're just Gully. I like it.
That's right.
Well, Gully, Scott Gulbransen, thank you so much for joining the show. It's been a pleasure having you on as we got to dive into all the excitement and not as exciting things that happened this past week across the NFL. So thank you.
Of course, Renee. Anytime, and continue the great work.